Hello, my magical little muffins. Thank you for helping me grow this YouTube channel. For those of you coming from TikTok, it's been super hard, but I wanted to talk to you guys today about the difference between inner dialogue and whether or not you're hearing deity. I'm also going to probably briefly elaborate on psychosis, since I did have a history of temporary postpartum psychosis back in 2018 after I gave birth to my son. So it's a very complicated subject, and I feel like I'm at liberty to elaborate on this one. So first off, it's the middle of the night, we're in my kitchen, there's a couple dishes in the sink, there's cake in the fridge if you want, and we have weed. So when I first started to get into deity work, I struggled a lot with a mental battle, an argument within my own confinements of my brain and my mind, whether or not it was inner dialogue, or what if I'm accidentally disrespecting, you know, a demon that I'm thinking that I'm talking to, and all of this other stuff. Now, before I get into those two topics regarding inner dialogue versus deity, I want to make it very clear I have a history of psychosis. I was clinically psychotic with hallucinations, non-epileptic seizures for 7 months, and it's a temporary condition that happens due to hormones and maybe really bad life events that can happen during or right before a woman becomes pregnant. So these were things that I anticipated with my doctor that I might have to face given my mental health history within the past couple of years before I had a baby. I hear a lot of people, and I read a lot of comments where people will romanticize psychosis or schizophrenia and say things like people who are schizophrenic are seeing the truth, and you know, they have the real true eyes of the spirit world, and this sort of stuff that can be very dangerous, because coming from personal experience, my experiences, 99% of them I don't probably even remember anyways, but were definitely not spiritual. And I did have some glimpses of things that I can talk about at another time that I do question, but the majority of it, it's like having a hot sparking wire and just tossing it into a puddle of gasoline, and that's your brain. You know, that is your brain reacting with itself and with your body. I was extremely sick and I was under 24-hour watch care, and I almost accidentally didn't stay alive, you know, due to that. So if you know anybody that struggles with mental health issues and they're hearing voices, please get them help immediately, because it was life-saving that I had a team of good doctors and physicians seriously in and out of my house, and my husband was able to take care of me. So I just have to put that out there, because I see too often a bit of maybe well-intended ignorance that can be very dangerous. So if you feel like you're hearing voices or something's telling you to do something that's very, very dangerous, please seek medical attention, and I hope that you have the support that you deserve, that people don't chastise you for that. So like, fucking put that out of the way, because I've never had an experience where something was telling me, and I work with heavy, you know, spirits and stuff. I've never had this experience where something was telling me to do something very dangerous or something that would hurt somebody. Even like within demonology, we have free will, you know what I mean? That's a big thing that I study and learn about in terms of us making our own choices and guiding and building our own moral compass for stuff, and having that liberty to do that within the assistance from people in the underworld. And I'm not saying everybody, because there's obviously very dangerous entities and deities that should be very respected and heavily researched before working with. It's probably recommended to do that with all of them, to be honest, whether you're working with, you know, deity from the underworld or demons, anything. Angels are just as dangerous, so they're not like a safer option. But outside of that, when I started to work with Lilith, and mostly with Lucifer, I had a lot of just epiphanies, and I was terrified at first of thinking that I'm just helping myself out, and what if I say something or converse and I'm being disrespectful? You know what I mean? Like, what if I'm thinking that these entities are speaking to me and I'm responding, and we have this, like, you know, because some deity, you know, especially within the Goetia, which is where my focus is in terms of deity work, there are relationships you can establish that are very, I don't want to say casual sort of, you know, you can be yourself. It's not, and I wish people understood that too. It's not like, oh dear Mother Lilith, mother of the valley of the underworld. Like, you don't have to like be like that. Maybe some people will require, deity will require some people to do that. I'm not sure. There's probably some lesson to learn from that, like of humility or something. I'm not sure. But outside of that, that's what I struggled with. I struggled with not knowing what the hell, what if I'm getting something wrong. But I started to document everything. And you can get a journal app if you're lazy like me and you don't want to sit and manually write things. And if you can't read your own handwriting, samesies, you know, like I'm good at a lot of things, but penmanship is just not my strong suit, and I've accepted that. I noticed a pattern. I noticed that there was what I didn't think a subconsciousness, but the words that were used, and a lot of them are a bit antiquated root words, like from Latin. And I love etymology, but I am not proficient in etymology, if that makes sense. Like, I am not fluent in etymology. But I noticed that there was different cadences in how I would hear deity, and there was different words and just sentence structures that I paid attention to, and I started to try to document during some of those first portion of experiences. And then I work predominantly with Belial, and right now Belial and Lucifer a lot. Like, it's, you know, it's been a thing for the past couple of months. But I talked to Belial about this, and he had me do this exercise where I completely shut off my mind and shut his words out and try to not think of anything. He told me when I want him to speak again to give that cue. So it's not like, you know, this sort of like mental fucking battle, which we go through enough, those of us from the left-hand path, to be honest. But I quieted my mind, I silenced my mind, and I didn't hear him or think about working with that energy or anything else around. I just was doing what I should do. And what I noticed then is my mind shifted to my surroundings. My mind shifted to my surroundings with the understanding that Belial was in the background, if that makes sense. And here comes the fucking trippy part, because I've never had anything like this happen before, and it was like just a glimpse of what the human mind, how much we can expand it. And that's outside of psychedelics. If you are pro psychedelic research and stuff like I am, I'm not talking about those sorts of trips that make your mind expand. I'm saying just as you are, maybe a little cannabis in your system. That's usually the case for me. He had me, you know, focus on clearing my mind, and when I was ready to invite his voice back in, to do that. But when I was doing that, I was focusing on my air conditioner in my room and how it sounded, and I was doing like kind of novice meditation techniques, to be honest. Like, for those of you who start, you're on your path in meditation, whether you're a more adept or you're in the beginning, you know that that's kind of a thing. You can focus on the sounds of your surroundings and just like let your mind kind of slither and wander a bit. And I found myself doing that. And then when I was ready to allow him to come in, he simply told me to keep my distraction on him for a minute. So the air conditioner was out, you know, just talking to him. Now he told me whatever it is that I was focusing on, to do that and to explain to him what I was focusing on. And I did that mentally, and then he started over talking to me. So within my mind, I had two things simultaneously going on at the same time, and they were not synchronized. And I was able to clearly understand both. And it didn't sound like somebody talking to you and the music going on at the background. Imagine somebody talking to you and you're able to concentrate and focus on giving them the attention they deserve, plus listen and appreciate your favorite song that's on the radio or a new song, and just listen to the lyrics and like dissect the music. For those of us who are like music nerds, we can sit there and do that for fucking ever. And having that happen at the same time, it's kind of like how most birds see two pictures at the same time because their eyes are on the side of their head. I don't know if a lot of fucking people know that. I don't know why I know that, but it stuck with me. And but that was the experience that I had that helped me really understand the power of the mind, and how even though you can say that it's a plausibility to think of two things at the same time, there's conversations that were flowing and words that were flowing that I can't premeditate. And when it comes to that part, And I'm sorry for like the lack of organization in my words. I just have a rare opportunity to like sit here in the kitchen and talk for half an hour without being disrupted. I totally accept that there is a possibility to be able to like segregate parts of your mind simultaneously, you know, and have those focal points at the same time in the comprehension. And that's a taste of what deity does and what spirit is and what we do on the astral plane as well. Or if we're time leaping, we can have all of those fucking experiences simultaneously. Because I ask questions like that, to be honest. I have a really good relationship with the energies that I work with, and I ask all these questions out of curiosity, not out of ego or a stance of wanting that power or craving it at all. I just have no desire for it. I want my own personal power to be amplified for myself and for my growth and to help humanity in whatever fucking little way I can. But in terms of curiosities, it's a small taste of what can happen, you know, yet you're focused on everything at the same time. One thing I wanted to make a point on is sometimes I feel like I can finish Belial's words. Belial and Lucifer talk a lot. For those of you who might not work with these entities, they're talkers, and they really enjoy your company. So if you do work the left-hand path, it's a consideration. They're not, you know, you'll have some very heavy work to do, and there's times where things are scary, but it's not to taunt you, if that makes sense. They'll show you their power, they'll show you their true forms at times, but they'll guide you through that, any intimidations you feel. So I just wanted to put a disclaimer out there. But there are times where I get frustrated with myself, and I would say, like, I feel like I'm answering everything that you're saying, and that's proof that it has to be inner dialogue. This is too crazy, you know what I mean? And it's a disheartening thing. Before working with deity, I was always agnostic within my path. I always believed all of my friends most people that I know within the witchcraft community that are, you know, dedicated to their path are very intellectual people who study the occult on a scholastic level. There's conviction in the words that they say and the experiences that they express to people. I had no doubt for years, my entire path, that these deities existed. I just had no personal experience with most of this sort of stuff. My path was really earth-based and astral-based. It wasn't deity work, and I think I was just too immature in certain areas. I find myself still sometimes finishing thoughts, you know, finishing sentences. I would find myself, if Belial was saying something, me feeling like I already know what he's gonna say. This has to be me, right? It has to be. And he had a really good point and a method to helping that inner battle if you're going through that with whoever you're working with. It doesn't have to be left-hand path. You don't have to be into black magic. It's not, we're not fucking terrible people, I promise. But the trick was to stop having to translate everything word for word in my head and just know. And that's our way of communicating. So there are times where we have conversations, obviously, and Belial especially, has a very distinct sort of cadence and almost like a hiss in his voice, but not like in a bad, stupid, cheesy way. It's like he's just a very eccentric spirit. I don't know how to explain it, but he's also extremely intelligent and extremely helpful. And he taught me really how to turn off the vocabulary and just understand as if I were, when I'm on the spiritual plane. Even though when you do astral work, I do have that English translation at times, but there are a lot of times, I forget this myself still, where when you're on the astral plane, you just know. There's no language spoken, there's no language heard. So I know that people who have these experiences can totally relate, but there's like no language that's need to be said. So within deity work, it's the same thing if that's where you're comforted. But if all else fails and you need reassurance, I've never had any negative experience where deity felt insulted. You know, it's mostly like Belial and Lucifer that I talk to this stuff, because there have been times, you know, when I first started this journey, where I'm just like, this is fucking, you know, I'm just really alone in this world. You know, there's no fucking deities helping me. You know, I just question it. You think there's no nothing. There's no fucking deities. I'm alone and I'm in my own head. How depressing. And Lucifer made a very good point, and it kind of checked me. He had said, well, why is it that there's no reluctancy when it comes to ancestral work or talking to random spirits that might intrude your residence. But then when it comes to gods, you're questioning it. Is that biasism, or is it you not understanding your own self-worth? And I'm like, fuck, man, it is. Because I can talk, you know, I hear from dead loved ones often, you know, especially through dream work. It's a thing. Like, I know they're around. In terms of other spirits, I've had definitely experiences with things in your home or things in your environment, or somebody's doing the, you know, whatever. I've seen a lot and I've experienced a lot on my journey here on earth thus far. But when it comes to deity, it was a really good question. Do I just feel unworthy because they're gods? And if so, that's something that I should really fix and, you know, kind of pick at and see what's going on. Let's dissect this. So we did, and we did dissect that. And I'm like, fuck, man, I really do need to come into my power. You see, we think a lot of the times outside of deity work, and this is just based on my experience, that we're going to do our best. We're going to have a pair of balls in the spine. We've got it, you know, and it's not it. We're doing that as a defense mechanism, as a coping mechanism to prove, you know, that we're not weak. And we're not. You're gaslit. You're the fucking scapegoat. A lot of us on this path, even within just any realm of magic, most likely or not, you've been the scapegoat in somebody's fucking dynamic. So, and that leads us to this journey because we are intelligent human beings. We are intelligent people that perceive things, and a lot of us are just comfortable in our own world, and other people try to intrude it, and it's this battle, right? So we lose our self-worth in the process without realizing it's a subconscious thing, and that can really apply to your, you know, vibrational frequency. Why am I not attracting things into my life? It's because of that sort of stuff. You're just subconsciously and subliminally just oppressed for fucking ever. And then you think you're not worthy of stuff, but you are. The gods, they have their own vibe, and they like humans, the ones that they want to work with. It's not because we're stupid and just entertainment, and it's not because we're just like so fucking handpicked by the gods, because we're interesting beings. You know, if we were all on the same sort of like equal plane, and we saw each other as equals, because humans really should, and we don't. We have this fucking whole hierarchy, and I can get into that in another video because it's just psychology based, and I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a fucking psychologizer. But a lot of it is based on how we perceive ourselves, if not most of it, and the need to please other people and the need to do all these things. So I learned all of this kind of shit, right, in the process of interrogating myself and not trusting myself, even though I know what I'm doing. And I've been a very spiritual person my whole life, to be honest. I had a chunk where I wasn't, but I still did shit. I still did spiritual shit even then. But for this, it was really confronting. And I think a lot of people go through that. And I think a lot of people overly romanticize it sometimes. And I don't know if that's healthy or not, because I'm not in that sort of dynamic. But I think if it helps you cope and it helps you get through shit, then maybe it's not harmless, as long as something's not telling you to do something painful to someone that doesn't deserve it. You know, I don't know. Magic is a very fucking open book and an open field, to be honest. But I had these struggles because of not understanding my own self-worth in that light, and I didn't even know it. And deity was able to help me unravel that. And I'm just like, fuck, man. You know, whether or not this was to be just in my mind, it works, you know, but I'm very convinced, because I've had too many experiences in like physical cues of this sort of stuff. And not only that, if you are questioning whether or not it's deity or inner dialogue, talk to whoever you're working with about it. And use divination. Ask if it's okay to question this, because you're not trying to disrespect them or anything. And deity work, there's levels of respect, obviously, but it's not like levels of worship and like, oh, dear Lord of the underworld. Like, it's fucking, you don't need to be like that, to be honest. Like, you can just kind of be yourself and just have, you know, good manners, be conversationalist, and ask questions. Ask questions out of curiosity so you can grow, not out of ego to look intelligent, you know, and I think you'll be fine. But I did this sort of stuff where a couple of times with Belial in particular, and I don't really use divination with Belial too often, but I used tarot, and it was like exactly what we were talking about. And I'm like, I'm stupid for questioning this, you know? So if you're struggling with that, I want you to feel validated, first of all. And second of all, try to tune it out. Talk to whoever you're working with and ask them for assistance with that. One last indicator I will say that it's deity and not you is, first of all, if you're self-deprecating, you really shouldn't be. You know, when it comes to, so if something's abusing you and something, you know, especially like a well-known god or goddess that doesn't have a history of doing that sort of stuff, maybe question that, you know, maybe see what's going on right there. If it's just, you know, you punishing yourself, which you shouldn't, please don't do. We have enough suffering on this fucking planet. But it's safe to ask questions. It's safe to ask if, you know, it's okay to use divination. And if you feel like it's saying no, like, don't be afraid if it is inner dialogue. Most importantly, if it is just inner dialogue, that's okay. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is you will know. It's kind of like how a biological mother blindfolded will know which baby's hers by just its scent. That's like a thing, right? We are mammals, you know, at the end of the day. And that's a phenomenon that we can do. In a spiritual sense, I don't like saying sixth sense. I don't know why. I don't have a thing against it. I just feel like there's more than one extra one, you know, there's like a whole fucking row of senses within the whole spiritual realm. But most importantly, make sure that, you know, you're having a good level of respect to who you're working with. And it's okay to romanticize your life, and it's okay to romanticize your spirituality to a healthy extent, though, because if it gets too ridiculous, then you're losing the whole point, you know, which is like a growth and insight and just knowledge of the universe and just about yourself and about your past lives and all of this good shit. At least that's my experience, and that's my and that would be my advice for you guys. So I'm going to leave it at that today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me and hanging out and talking about this. I really hope that something that I said helps you, and I will see you next video. Take care.